Good evening, all, wherever you are, at home, elsewhere. I'm your host, Byron Campbell, our co-host, Chris Diali. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Byron, and good evening to our listeners and viewers across all the platforms. We're happy to be here with you again this Wednesday.
We're here, Chris, and I can tell you that we have upcoming, after our chit-chat, we have almost said Honorable William Joseph, and we're going to be looking at a lot politics, social issues, economic issues. We're looking at Grenada and what's taking place. So we're going to have an interesting conversation with William right at our first break. But let me start, Chris. Chris, here we have, it's official, we know we have a late budget presentation. It's expected in the first quarter, but we already in February when it's going to happen. But I'm particularly concerned about the implications. We know that the Ministry of Finance, the Permanent Secretary, the Minister, they signed a special warrant granting, I think, up to $400 million that could be used in the first quarter. So they have funds that they can, in fact, use up to March, which is the end of the first quarter. But what are the implications? What does the public know? What's the plan for? It's most unusual, though, I think, to have such a late budget presentation. Has that happened in your time, over 15 years in the Parliament? And what are the implications?
It may have happened once or twice, but the last government had decided that for efficiency's sake and all of that, it's better to present before the year ends, for the next year, next fiscal year.
Yeah.
You may have instances of certain things that may not be ready, they have not done certain things, and you may run into January.
Yeah.
But this is going into February, and if the warrant is taken up to the end of March, it says that it could be in March. The implications of 3 months hence into the new fiscal year has implications for payment, recurrent expenditure for the government, hence the warrant, because they need to pay salaries, they need to pay all these other things. But I think the bigger issue for us in the country is that the government's payment cycle every month contributes a significant amount of cash flow within the economy, whether it's to pay bills to the private sector who they would have taken goods from and they need to pay off their bills, and of course people who want to spend based on their salaries and what they need to do. You may have implications if these things are late. I'm not saying they are, that you have banks and financial institutions that depend on payments for persons to deal with their issues with loans and so on. So I don't think it sends the correct signal, because you get a perception, because consultations should have been done way early, way in 2024, at least the last quarter, to have a budget prepared.
Yes.
It sends the perception that the Ministry of Finance, they haven't said anything as to the real reason, that there are issues in either the preparation of the budget or the figures that they're crunching and how they need to present it, if they want to do a deficit. But we don't know what they want to do. If they're adjusting fiscal policy to increase revenues,
we don't know.
We don't know. What are the sectors that they highlight? And remember, I always say, remember when the throne speech was done, the throne speech was done in such brief way that nobody knows exactly what the government is coming with. All they say, wait until the budget.
I heard today, in fact, the senator, your replacement in the Senate, Chris, representing the private sector, saying, not insinuating, but saying that he believes that the delayed budget might be a good thing, given what's happening in the United States and the trade issues and so forth. I didn't see that connection at all, by the way.
I don't understand that connection. I mean, at the end of the day, whatever tariff adjustments that the Trump administration is making, you could argue that some of our costs may go up, but our costs will go up regardless of trade tariffs, whether we are a net importing country, and if inflation increases in the U.S., they pass it on.
And the budget is an estimate; it's a plan.
Correct.
It can be varied.
You can pivot, and there's risks in the budget
both
and the figures.
Again, we just have received the IMF report. Of course, this report was done late last month. The IMF Executive Board conclusions in the 2024 article. That is the consultation with Grenada. You've read it, Chris. What are your views on it?
Well, it's a good report. They have indicated that the government was able to stabilize things, especially in light of the barrel situation.
Yeah.
The fiscal policies seem to be sound and continue to be sound. They are projecting a 3.9% GDP growth in 2025, which is what the government also have estimated just around 4%. So if they could maintain that and get the debt to GDP ratio down to 60% as indicated in the IMF report, they believe that Grenada will remain stable over 2025 economically, barring some major situation again with whether it's hurricane or whatever may come. So I think it's a good report.
Should I be concerned? Because the report goes on to say, Chris, that it talks about the medium-term growth is projected to slow given the tourism sector operates near its peak. In other words, it's max. But they talk about key risk on the downside include the threat of further natural disasters, potential shocks to tourism demand, because you know what can happen regionally with that can happen, and and in particular, and the uncertain scale of future CBI, citizen by investments inflows. And one of the points they make too is the non-bank financial system faces rising vulnerabilities, risk, from the continued rapid expansion of the credit unions and the rising cost of property insurance. But particularly income from the CBI inflows, because we know it raised over $500 million last year. The IMF is raising concerns about that, the sustainability of this level of inflows, and therefore it is saying to the government, look at the alternatives.
Well, I mean, the IMF have to say something and look at downside risks as they see it. Natural disasters, these are not new downside risks that they have indicated. But on the CBI front, I always say the IMF is American-based IMF. The U.S. is not happy that these flows are moving in our direction. And you can't tell high net worth people where to invest their money. And we don't have a high preponderance of Americans in CBI. It is more countries like the African.
But Chris, one important dimension of it is persons who want entrance and visa requirements into the U.S. The U.S. could say, we are not accepting any...
And they haven't said that over all the years.
I know, but this is Trump 2.0 now. This is a different reality.
That is correct, Trump 2.0. You need to look at it, but Trump 2.0 himself has a CBI program of his own. The U.S. have it, Canada have it, England have it. So they all have, they are just concerned of how the money is moving.
Particularly, Chris, as we know, the majority of our applicants, guess what, are Chinese.
Well, yes, but...
And they're targeting the Chinese. So all I'm saying is that we need to look at alternatives. We shouldn't become too dependent on our CBI program.
You could say the same thing about tourism.
We're
heavily dependent on tourism.
Yes.
Tourism have a heavy downside risk. If we have a natural disaster, it wipes out the tourism.
True.
So we back to nothing.
Yes.
So we have risks that are not controllable in that sense, but only to acknowledge. And when you project a GDP growth, you take the downside risks into concern. The compliance issue with the non-bank sector, which is the credit unions, they have always said that the risks to the for us to the credit union movement is the smaller credit unions that don't have a rigid or proper compliance department to deal with the issues of AML and AMTL. So you need to. The credit union needs to get together. But ECCB is running a project where they could get the compliance issue of the non-bank sector up to standard.
I don't trust Trump. Chris, well, let's look at Trump 2.0, Chris. And I mean, look, we're going to have deportees. And I want to say that once you're deported from the United States, you're a deportee. A deportee don't have to be a criminal. You know, and I agree with the government saying we're accepting all Grenadians, all deportees, but we want you to treat them with dignity. You know, they are not, don't send them in shackles and handcuffs and chains, Send them home. We'll accept them. We'll make, but what is our capacity, Chris, we don't know who they are, what they did in the use. How do we prepare when we don't have this information?
Well, even though we have the information, I mean, I always argue that we need more people in our country to swell the population. I don't think through the deportee system that the U.S. is planning is probably the best way. But even though, remember, some of these deportees outside of the criminals now are people who have been socialized quite differently over the years. If Trump is going to say, you don't have birthright citizenship again, These are people who have not lived in our culture for years.
Yes.
How they adapt and what they do, they're going to have a difficult time.
Yeah.
Grenada is not a country where, you know, you can click your finger and things happen. We are slower. Our service is not up to that standard that they may come from in the society.
Yeah.
So it is going to be a difficult transition. How our country reacts to that and the cost to us, because nobody's talking about the cost.
Where they going?
Right.
Who are their family? Do they have family?
Correct.
Do they have
how we managing the costs
yeah.
associated with these deportees?
So there are implications for that.
Yeah,
but Chris, just looking
implications.
more at the Trump 2.0. Look, I mean, the guy's crazy. He's dangerous to the world, Chris, to everybody.
The U.S. voted him in.
Look, I mean, we could talk about that for the evening. He's removed himself from the Paris Agreement on the environment, the World Health Organization. He's removed himself. USAID is such an important and critical institution for aiding a lot of work in Africa and globally, you know. Just shut it down.
The DOJ and the FBI.
Yeah, it's like,
send on people.
the guy, listen to what he said today. I mean, I don't want to go into Gaza now, but he says, look, we're going to take Gaza. We're going to develop results. Then we're going to...
Yeah, well...
I don't know, Chris. I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to say so, but let's come back local, Chris. I was on the Carnage today, Chris. And the pedestrian walk, the sidewalk, is dangerous. It's you know, I'm surprised. It has to be attended to now. We have obstacles, ropes, connecting boats across the sidewalk. You know, we have broken culverts on the side. You know, I'm saying there might be a plan to do some major infrastructure, but immediately, no, at this moment, we need to do something. Somebody, you know, somebody's going to get injured. It's dangerous. Very dangerous.
Byron has been a project on the table for many years. The financing, let me tell you the two urgency on the Carnage. Just as you see, the tendering and the mooring of boats. On the Carnage is a problem, has been a problem. There was a project that was developed to move all the boats off of the Carnage and either move them around by the CARICOM jetty or to put them up in Grand Mall, where the Port Authority bought land up there to deal with that.
See, Grand Mall is not a suitable place, and I'll tell you why. We have the marine protected area boundary there. The pollution from the boats, that's not going to happen. That's not going to be.
The Carnage is not the place either.
Send them to Perseverance then.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The boatmen may get upset with you. But the other issue with the Carnage is the porosity of the wall.
Yeah.
Right from by Nawasa in the back there, sails right up to the fire station. You have businesses like Renwick and Thompson pumping water to the foundation 24/7. Hubbard's have it to some degree. Most of the businesses, water is way past the road into the businesses. And we know this. It's not, and we don't only know this, we know this a long time. So the whole wall have to be repaired. That is a major spend. But the longer we take to do it, the more we risk at people falling down in the Carnage or vehicles just sinking in a sinkhole.
I can see it happen. Because there's an existing sinkhole there, Chris, you know. So that's...
we are famous reactive people.
Yes,
so when things happen, we just react.
Chris, we've talked about this before, Chris. But what we see happening, we continue having hundreds of vehicles coming in on a monthly basis. You know, for the year, we've had, 300-400 vehicles?
No. For the year, it's 3,000 plus vehicles landed in Grenada.
Last year? Yeah. I mean, a month for the year
far. The month is an average of 300.
So, and I mean, I want to say that at the same point in recognizing the Transport Commission for initiating, because we had the chairman here recently, and he talked about experimenting with moving school children separately, and that's happening, and kudos to them. Excellent initiative, and I really hope that the data can guide them in terms of, but in the meantime, Chris, suddenly,
it's only to do with the bus and
with the buses and public transport.
That has nothing to do with private.
Yeah, but I'm just recognizing that's part of the whole transport sector. But we have a problem. It is unsustainable. It's costing us, and it's getting worse because of the time delays that is creating and the cost of transportation.
Byron, if I leave home to get to work for 8 o'clock, I live in Fort Judy.
Yeah.
And I leave by 7:15, 7:45. I don't get to work until 8:30 to 9 because of traffic through the Calivini
Yeah.
area, Toby Road,
Yeah.
and then you meet it again
Yeah.
when you get to Granans Valley, coming into by the Ram section
Yeah.
there that way.
Yeah.
So I am saying that the proliferation or the amount of vehicles on the road is going to make that traffic congestion even worse. Put on top of that the traffic department does not do anything in the peak periods of traffic to alleviate the congestion. So we see no wardens in the Calivini area between 8 and 10. We see very little of them down by the roundabout by Rams.
Yeah.
And if they're there, they're not doing anything much with the traffic. They
Yeah.
stand up on the side and they're
Yeah.
watching. We see very little movement with pedestrian crossing, especially by Ayer. As soon as a pedestrian reaches the field, they must cross and traffic has to stop.
So solutions.
We are not applying the small low-hanging fruits
Yeah.
to deal with the traffic. Probably the congestion, yes, but if you ease it up with proper traffic controls
Management,
and deployment
yeah.
of people and
Yeah.
management, I ain't hearing the commission talking about that.
I don't know, Chris.
And we have peak periods. If you come along Lucas Street in the morning, it's drama.
Or any time during the day,
Yeah,
long
it's-
in the afternoon.
And
It's
it's not for the whole day. During the peak periods, manage it, and then
Yeah.
after that, you let it go.
Yeah, Chris, we have a lot of stuff to talk about. Time is going very rapidly, and we have William to join us. Any significant thing you want to raise before?
Well, and I think we need to
Oh,
talk about what's happening with the amendment that went through for PERC and for the National Water Resource Management Unit.
Briefly.
All of those. I have no problem with the taking out of these things under NAWASA, like the resource management of water and the importance of quality and control.
Mhm.
My only issue with these things is that here we're forming a new type of organization. Can we staff it? Can we control it? Can we monitor it? What are the regulations to control that? We are very famous for putting in a lot of laws, but we don't police these laws when we put it in because we don't staff it properly. So yes, it's a good thing. Everybody applauding it and so on. I applauding it too, but is it going to make real impact? It's like having a new hospital and you can't staff it and you can't equip it. What is the sense of having a brick and mortar? Similarly, PERC, they have extended the remit of PERC, so NAWASA now has to go to PERC if they need an increase in rates and justify it, and then PERC will tell them yea or nay or what percentage they could get or not based on the justification. That wasn't there before. And of course, they have appeal tribunals that are set up under these acts that give you a mechanism to appeal decision by PERC or any one of the national water resources. And under national water resources, farmers can't just put a hose to the river and pump
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
to their field.
They had to get permit. They had to get a license to do it.
And
Yeah.
understand what it is
Yeah.
they're doing and the quality and so
Yeah.
forth and so on. So it puts a lot of administrative work for the farmer and for others to get to this license and whether or not they'll be efficient in these things. I mean, that's just the
Outline it.
small areas that we looked at. But Byron, we need to talk about the Pension Act.
But Chris, we don't have time.
I know.
Yeah.
I ain't talking about no.
Now, okay.
Right? Pension Act, Labor Code amendments. The private sector is not happy with those and the impact. So we need to talk about these things probably on the next chat.
Yeah.
Right? So that we can see how the impact for the private sector is on these things.
Viewers, stay with us. We'll be right back with our special guest, William Joseph.
Fit for life and allied laboratories, providing quality care and expertise. Fit for life and allied laboratories, see our in-house doctors and our pharmacies. Get expert care and quality tests. When it comes to your health, you deserve the best. And allied laboratories, we're taking care of Grenada.
At Maitland's Motor Sales and Rentals, we sell engines for all makes of vehicles: Toyota GT Corolla 6-speed, Toyota MR2 and Evolution 3. We've got transmissions for Toyota Noah, 2.0 Suzuki Escudo, Toyota Corolla, windscreens for Grand Vitara, 2 and 4-door Escudo, Toyota Corolla front and back, and Suzuki Escudo wheel covers. Also available are motor oil, oil filters, crystal headlights for Toyota Corolla, brakes for all makes of vehicles. We sell C16 and Q16 racing fuel. Special prices on oils and accessories for customers who purchase vehicles from us. You're never left undone because we source the part if we don't have it. Maitland's Motor Sales and Rentals, empowering people through mobility.
Welcome back, viewers, to Community Forum. As indicated earlier, we have our special guest, Mr. William Joseph. Of course, Willie is well known to all of us. He has specialities in the credit union movement. He has specialty economic advice, tourism, PS in government, and at different ministries. So, well-rounded individual. And this evening, we're going to be talking some politics, understanding the independence, the theme, and look at some of these things and get Willie's opinion on that. So, Joseph William.
All right, thank you so much. Your generosity grows. Unlike my friend.
I've taken that.
Thanks, Byron.
Willie, let's talk about the independence theme and your thoughts on it. I mean, you could read it out and tell us what you think about it and its effectivity going forward for the next 50 years.
Yes, very interesting. It says embracing the future of development, transformation, and unity. A very powerful components. My immediate reaction to it when I heard it is that, what is the foundation for it? And if you didn't or don't establish a foundation for it, how are we going to materialize it? When we got to 50, we had a very excellent opportunity, I think, to have set up what I have called the 50th Anniversary Commission to look at what has happened with us as a country, as a people, over the first 50 years of our existence as a nation. And then from all of that learning, you use the information to shape our development strategy going forward. And not just development in economic and social terms, it's issues of, for example, the Constitution, issues regarding governance, issues regarding what we do with power. Because as you know, and as your listeners would know, viewers would know, we have gone through a lot as a young nation in the first 50 years. Unlike perhaps most other Caribbean, certainly Caribbean English-speaking countries, we have really taken a beating at the hands of the people who have led us in the politics. And so I thought that when we got to 50, it really was an excellent opportunity to have addressed the whole business of not just the celebration, which we had and which we enjoyed by and large,
it's fun.
but we also needed, on the other side of that coin, the construction side. What are we going to build and put in place for the next 50? We did not address that, and slam bam, we come to 51, and here is this theme.
Let me challenge you on this, because here we had, when we turned 50, the Prime Minister gave a very eloquent speech in the Trade Center for the next 75, and what he perceives our development should occur, how it should occur. And he also married the 2035 document that we produce, and to move along those lines in the various sectors, whether it be human, social, economic, and otherwise. And with this new theme, the government has always been critiqued when it comes to the transformational aspect of it. So when you look at that, you would have expected that a foundation could have been set based on what the Prime Minister spoke about in the Trade Center, the Marina, the document, the developmental document 2035, and so on.
Yeah, you see, the thing about it is that
I hear you on the commission, by the way, which I think is a missed opportunity.
the thing about it is that you can have a speech, and we've had many. We could hear a lot of policy pronouncements. We can hear proposals and suggestions of various kinds that people make in the public domain. But when it comes to these really very fundamental issues of national development, we have to move from, in my view, from the rhetoric, from the first talk, to the deeper substance. And the way we establish the deeper substance is to put the concepts, put the proposals in black and white. So the average citizen could see, let us take the transformation agenda matter that as opposition party campaigning, we heard on the platform. The government, the party got elected and the government continued to talk about it. But we do not have a document, none of us, that addresses this thing in its core and necessary details, so that all citizens, institutions, and who could go to that and see what is it that Grenada is intending to do.
In other words, for me, in a private sector context, you have a strategic plan, but you have to have an action plan.
That's right.
To back up the strat plan.
That's right.
So that, as we say, boots on the ground, things are changing. This is how we get into the goals that we have set.
Yeah, and there's no wheel to invent, you know. There are a number of countries that have raised this transformation issue. Rwanda, Ghana, and some others. And then you go and Google the thing and you see the documentation right there online.
With the action plan.
Yeah, you know, you could see
target dates. That's
right. So it's one of our deficiencies, and I think it's not too late, as you would know, to correct these things in the public interest.
Yeah. What is your thoughts on the IMF report that just came out? From the economic side now, shifting gears a little.
Well, frankly, I have not read it. I saw the caption, and that said it was, you know, essentially a positive report, and I thought, well, okay, that is very good. I was not very surprised at that, because I think if you look at some of the elements of the economy, I think you would find that that they've been relatively stable over the last couple of years. The tourism, I mean, is really performing very, very well. Construction, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but my perception is that construction continues to be robust. The CBI, where we've celebrated record earnings from the CBI, they call it a new thing now. But the brand is CBI. That's the brand. We'll never forget that.
Investment management is
that's the brand. That's where different.
CBI.
You see. Yeah. So you know, it's good for the country when the economic development strategy and program is evaluated by institutions, whether it's the Caribbean Development Bank, whether it's the our own bank, whether it's the World Bank, and so on, and they find things worthy of commendation. And it says something about the government and their management approach, but it also says something to us as a Grenadian people, that we are being led in terms of the direction of the economy substantially along the right path.
Yeah, and it has implications for poverty rate or unemployment rate and all of that. And the report doesn't speak specific to that, but at least it will have implications for that, and government needs to get kudos on that as it moves forward. Byron?
William, I want to go social with you. Here's the thing. Over the past 2 decades, our economy have moved from agriculture, it has shifted from to services, driven by tourism, construction, etc.
And education services.
And education. But you have made the point that, and you've seen that in your commentary in your podcast, that you've seen the development of a robust middle class, and you think this is important for Grenada in the socio-economic landscape. But why is it still that we have, despite the economic advancements, we still have approximately 32% of our Grenadian residents live below the poverty line, 13% considered extremely poor? How do we emerge from this, William, with a growing middle class? A contradiction, like?
No, it's not a contradiction.
But why we have this?
It's not a contradiction at all.
So what strategies or policies could reverse this trend?
You know, one of the things that, and it's a feature, in every country, rich and poor. Of course, the magnitude is several times
32%.
multiplied in the poorer country. But unemployment,
it's about 12%.
there are many explanations for unemployment in
it's
the
about
economy.
12%. That's the official numbers by the government.
How much? 12%?
11 to 12, yeah.
All right. And to a large
I think it's
extent,
far lower than that, actually.
You think it's more?
to a large extent,
Less, okay.
to a large extent, that unemployment is experienced in rural communities to a large extent. So it's suggesting that there are issues to be addressed in rural Grenada in terms of development, in terms of economic activity, in terms of skills, training for people. But having said that, you see, poverty thing creates its own culture, its own mentality. And so you could throw money at rural communities under various projects, and you might well find that the outcomes, the results, the impacts are not what you expected. I have a view that while it is good to do that, in other words, invest in these things, it is also important for us to address the mindsets of people who live in these communities so that they understand, A, they must understand themselves, B, they must understand what the investment is seeking to do and how they can benefit and their own responsibility.
Let me throw in
that
another
process.
caveat for you to comment on. When you look at the labor situation in the country, and I want to take it from two angles, the majority of people we see lining on the blocks are males.
Yeah.
The majority of the other population in terms of females finding something to do either through education, through whatever job that is available to them. That is a mindset. If we're talking transformation, we have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Then there is now a preponderance of people coming out of Venezuela, out of other countries that are willing to come into our country, work twice as hard as our own national, whether it's in agriculture or construction, and get the same pay, but working at an efficiency rate that our locals can't compete with.
Yeah.
And that is now going to be a problematic issue. If I'm in construction, my biggest challenge is getting men to come to work on time, work as a plan, and get it executed. If I get somebody else from the region to come in and do it, I'm going to take the person from the region.
Oh yeah, and so it's telling us that you see, development must not leave the people behind. So you could have investments taking place. That investment is causing, and then the people now who must service the investment don't have the mindset, the correct mindset, to cause the thing so that you don't get the best results out of it.
We still think service is servitude.
You see, well, that's a nonsense perception. I agree with. I mean, I hear you and I hear it too, but in this day and age, if folks just think about what's happening, think about life, think about this whole business of earning a livelihood, and it's strange. I was tempted by, a couple seconds to say that it has to do with our plantation mentality, right? There might be some threads, linking back to that. But in the plantation era, poor and unskilled people worked hard and they worked on time.
That's right.
Attitude.
And they produced.
Attitude. Yes. Willie, I'm going to shift a bit to
Please.
politics. We'll come back to this. You've been following, political pundit, you've been following the political developments here, particularly...
I'm so sorry, but this pundit thing...
Well, whatever. meaning you have a podcast, you've been making commentaries, you've been giving an opinion about the political atmosphere.
Yes, no, the
It's
very
from,
true, very
it's
true,
from
very
that
true.
point of view.
No,
I can remove that
I
word.
was just...
No problem.
Yeah. I told Paul Roberts recently that, and that's why I intervened.
Okay, good.
There's a difference between
A pundit.
an analyst and a pundit.
So I'll call you an analyst, a political analyst. That's fine, Willie. But particularly what's been happening within the NNP, given the convention, the Peter David scenario, what had occurred, and presently there's speculation regarding the conclusion or the developments of Peter's political career. There's been discussions about it, and he's taken certain actions on this. What is your view on this as you see this political scenario work out? Well, what do you see for his future, given the initiative with the how you call this, the meetings he's been having, town hall meetings, the calls from some of the supporters for the formulation of a new party, his pronouncement in Parliament in particular, he appears as a statesman, of course, words of wisdom announced there. What are your general views on this, your analysis of what's going on here?
So perhaps if we sequence it this way, we might make good progress. And help the listeners. The NNP, having lost the elections, found themselves in a situation where, I shouldn't just rush to that. You've lost the election, your leader has aged. So you find yourself in a situation where there's going to be the need for transition
And change.
right?
Yeah.
Not just and there's even alongside that the theater in which the political parties are operating in Grenada is such that you see that middle class thing that you just talked about,
Yes.
and all of that shift, the demographic shifts that have taken place in the last 15 to 20 years, right? 2/3 or almost of the electorate are people under 45.
32
Really?
the medium age is 32, 32.
I mean, look
So,
at that.
young
So
population.
we understand what's happening
Yeah.
there. These people do not operate on the basis of the old-fashioned model, right? They don't. So it's not about, charisma and I like a man and I like a man. They associate with people without the baggage or burden of loyalty. So you have that. The other thing you have is that the vote is now mobile. You can't a fella vote a party this year and he makes an assessment next time and he's voting another party next time.
So this so-called base doesn't exist
That
all
base
the
thing
time.
is flickering.
Okay.
You see?
Okay.
So there are a number of factors that are playing up there that the political party needs to concern itself with. Our friends in the NNP understood, they learned this very late, after the elections, I believe, that the children of the strong supporters did not support and vote for the NNP. Why? Because those children, many of whom had entered the middle class, the lower middle class and the working class, and they're better educated anyway, were not happy with the stigma of poor and vulnerable. So I'm trying to say that all of these parties and individuals who are flattering and so on and so on and so on in the parties need to understand a few fundamentals about what's happening in the political marketplace.
Now, what about Peter David's approach? Because, okay, he has indicated publicly that He has resigned from the party. So a number of his people in his constituency resigned with him. You're hearing more and more resignations on different constituency levels. The issue to me, after the convention and having Dr. Mitchell as chairman and Gregory Bowen as deputy, says to me and some of us who look that Emlyn Pierre's political leader, not having the cash depth that the chairman and probably the deputy chairman has, is almost being signaled as somebody that will not have the amount of authority to make changes and do things as she wants.
There is that, and I agree with you entirely. And there's also the retention of the office of leader of the opposition.
Correct.
By Dr. Mitchell. Yeah. No. So you are causing a split in focus. People don't know well, we're looking at this leader here. So what we have, in effect, is a leader leading a leader. Repeat that. We have a leader leading a leader. So it's going to pose problems for the transition. The new leader establishing herself, building her bona fides beyond the convention vote as leader of the NNP.
Particularly, William,
Yeah, problems.
where Dr. Mitchell continues to hold on to leader of the opposition.
That's what I'm saying.
In Her Majesty's Parliament.
That's what I'm saying.
That is a main and primary instrument.
That's what I'm saying. And one of the things about that is that there is no public good that it attaches to that. It's a personal thing. So you are at that stage. Your party is, has faced defeat. It needs to go through its wilderness period and so on. And you are contributing to the sluggishness, the indecision surrounding the path forward.
So you're not giving her, you're not helping. In fact, you're impeding her ability to lead. But William, you're avoiding the question raised about Honorable Peter David.
Yeah, well, no, I will never avoid that.
Well, I didn't hear you.
No. I said we should sequence it.
Okay,
and
fine.
So we began with the context,
I want to hear your
the
views.
national, the Grenada's
That's fine.
context, the
Okay.
NNP context,
Okay.
and so on. So we look at Peter David. As you know, I've said many things in relation to Peter David. And I'm happy that all the things that I've said, all of them have had to do with his conduct, his decisions. So there's no fabrication of us, you telling lies about him.
Yeah.
All of those things. So when I reckon with him in this period, one of the things that strikes me is that, well, in 25 years, there's only one leader that he was prepared to accept. One.
Who's that?
Keith. One.
Okay.
So, and then I look at how he is conducting himself in this period. And I bring alongside his conduct since 2010.
Okay.
And I say to myself, well, if you're going to do all of these things to get the office of leader, it worries me what you're going to do to keep it. I'm very worried what you are going to do to keep it. So now, what in heaven's name would say to somebody that because you don't get the leadership in a party that you had hoped for, you must form another party?
But it's popularity. That's undoubtable.
What popularity? Let's examine that.
That's
No.
I think there was a poll.
Hold on. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
I hear about these things and so on. There was a poll back in 2012,
Yeah.
by the same friend.
Yeah.
Same fella. He's been doing a number of polls for them and he reports the same thing all the time. Look at Peter's record of voting, his harvest in the voting.
Yeah.
All right? The last time he ran for the NDC, he won the Tongue of St. George by 296 votes. Then we had the blowout year of 18. He's with the NNP now.
Yes.
And he wins by almost 900 votes.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward to 22 and see what that picture is. In 22, he wins the Tongue of St. George by 211 votes.
Yes.
So that effectively, he lost 3/4 of his majority.
This was said it was a result of the negative vibes coming from Dr. Mitchell. You know, that didn't help him.
No.
It's alleged that.
Hold on. I don't buy that, man. He was most faithful there. And there was no quarrel among themselves at the time.
Well, that we know of.
Not that we know. There's no.
look at this
In fact,
yeah.
one of his surrogates would tell you that Peter essentially financed the NNP's campaign.
But look at the success of the town hall meeting. Look, people are resigning left, right, and center to support Peter.
Listen to me.
Isn't that a fact?
That doesn't move me. That doesn't move
Well, I'm
me.
just
I don't
saying
think it moves the needle in any significant way.
But really, when you look at the context, though, how much things have changed from 2010, 2022 to now? What has happened within the NNP? A lot of people are not happy with how the convention was held and
Yes.
what was done.
Yes.
Yeah.
That works to his favor in some degree. But when you see this same voting populace under 32 thereabout,
Yeah.
young people who are looking for a different approach,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
He gets, in my view, not a pass, but he gets an opportunity to work on that and to create, in my view, a split of the NNP. He could split the vote, he could as well split the support, and that, in my sense, requires the MNP side of the MNT to take serious note.
Yeah, logically, yes. Culturally, what you describing there is another feature of retribution politics. In other words, the fella pushed me out, I am denied the leadership, I am going to set up a framework through which
It's not designed for power.
You know,
that's
but
right.
all our politics in these countries are retribution politics.
Yeah,
We vote on a retribution basis. I like what NDC do me, I like what NNP do me, I'm voting for them.
You see,
And you bring it to the
remember I
constituency
just said higher up that the vote is now very mobile.
Yes.
The way we vote now is not the way we voted 50 years ago.
But that makes it even worse.
You see?
New demographics,
So,
yeah.
yes, and let us understand it. If you go into, the thing is a system. On the other side of that coin, you have
Okay.
the NDC and its leader. You, at 70 years, with all of that baggage that is well established and known, no stories, no fabrications, well known. How are you going to, with an electorate that is 60, 2/3 is under 40 years old?
But these,
How are you going
these
to do it?
don't have that passion that you and I have based on the baggage that Peter David allegedly brings to the fore. A good example of that is the revolution. The revolution passion dies with us in our age group. And the younger people in their 30s and their 40s don't have the passion of what the revolution brought to Grenada and the changes.
Let me tell you
So
something.
that is going to shift with this young
Let me
demographic.
tell you something. One of the constants in this thing, and is very, very dominant with this young demographic, is Grenadian nationalism. All the other factors we could point to, that one, and we hardly discuss it, but that one is deep with them. They are very Grenadian. I stood up on the fringes of the Tempe playing field in the campaign last time. Deacon Mitchell is leader of the opposition. He hardly knew Morris Bishop, if at all. And that man stood up and invoked the spirit of Morris Bishop. And he's talking to a young crowd of people, Grenadians. And when I saw the reaction to that among those young people, who themselves did not know Morris Bishop, they've heard about him, they've associated him with Grenadian nationalism, a leader who had this thing in their minds, had brought some standing reputation, good reputation to the nation. And so they would buy that. They're not concerned about ideological stuff, not that.
Yeah.
Just the nationalism, the symbolism of a man who had done those things that they have heard about. So me ask you now, what would they hear about Peter?
Well,
Exactly. What's the thing? Because
What are they gonna hear about
the same baggage from that time
what?
is going to, he has to use it as a marketing agent.
I don't know how he's going to
So,
use
so,
it.
so,
I don't know how he's
and
going to use
the
it.
question is, what's the future? What do you see happening? What's
Well,
Peter's
I think
politician?
I think one of the points we should make is that in Grenada we do not have an appetite or reputation for third parties. I don't know that any third party has. Listen, Francis Alexis came with PLM. He had no cause. And this is one of the important issues. There must be some public cause.
He was untreated
That
fairly.
you
Peter was untreated
that's not public, that's personal. That's personal. It's not
It's
public.
party.
So you can't tell me as a voter I must come and side with you because Keith and them treat you bad.
Okay.
What's
fine.
your public
Reasonable.
cause?
Yeah,
But in the
yeah.
town hall meetings that he is
See?
proposing to hold now, and to understand what are the people's sentiments regarding
Yeah.
his position, the existing NNP position, and where they probably like to see it go. That is why I say that is a decent, smart move to engage in, because that is something that will give him, in my view,
Yeah.
an understanding of what a third-party scenario
He might well learn a few things from that.
Correct.
But understand it, I do not expect the NDC or the NNP. By the way, for me, Peter is always NNP Peter. He is not any other Peter. He is NNP Peter. So you didn't try anything but independent Peter. It's NNP Peter. So I do not expect these two other parties to sit down and enable him to grow some sort of significant. In other words, what I'm saying is that I anticipate that these other parties are going to get on the ground themselves with their own messages, because the marketplace is wide open. You see, it's wide open. So we had PLM, no public cause with Francis
Right,
Alexis.
yeah.
It got nowhere.
Enough.
Nuff got nowhere, no cause anyway.
Yeah.
Then Patrick and Twine, that one flattered to deceive.
Yeah.
Because many people thought perhaps Patrick, with his professional notoriety and so on and these things, some folks, that something might have come from that, speaks well, is well known in the region and so on, very accomplished. Again, that fell dead. So I don't know. And many times when we do this kind of analysis, we must take into account the culture of the Grenadian people, right? The culture of the Grenadian people. And I'm finding more and more that in the last X years, we have had a number of guys who have said to themselves that I must lead.
William,
It's a problem.
William, give me your final closing comments on how you see the current political scenario working out. What's your take on this? Where do you see it going? What's your?
All right. So I think I do not put much stock in the Peter effort right now to build anything. I don't put much. I'm not saying that something would not emerge.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I don't think it would be impactful.
Yeah.
I think the NNP must go through its wilderness period, transition and retraining and transformation, if you will.
Yeah.
All right? So they must go through that. And then you have the NDC. I think that they are getting a lot of credit, some of it by default. Some of it by default. And having said that, I think it's fair to say that they are in the ascendancy, that party in Grenada at this point, for all of their weaknesses. They are still in the ascendancy. I do not envisage any party, any one of the other, the NNP currently, or anything that Peter might float, knocking them off where they stand. It is not to say that they don't have weaknesses of their own, that they need to fix. Some of them very quickly. But I think that in terms of people's perception of how, especially of their leader, which is both a strength and a cause for vulnerability, a source of vulnerability, because it's one coin. He built it up and he could break it. So I think the thing is pretty safe now in terms of certainly the next election cycle. I see the NDC prevailing. The NNP with its new leader is going to have to dig pretty deep. It's going to have to dig very deep to come to the fore with politics that reflect an understanding of the features of Grenadian politics at this time, of the Grenadian society at this time. In other words, you have to have a theory, a political theory of governance. And the last point I would make is this. An aspect of that is that folks need to understand what are the factors that account for the removal of an incumbent. What factors? It's not noise. It's not blaming. The traditional blame thing and so on. They blame. It's not that. It's not even noise about corruption. Not that. Because culturally we give a lot of slack for that thing. So it's a period for me, in my mind, where serious politicians would do well if they spend a little time not rushing themselves forward, but understanding us, and especially our children and grandchildren, understanding these
that
folks.
new demographic we spoke about.
And the times in which we live in this Grenada, that is very important, because at the end of the day, I don't know. I have some young children, they're in their 30s and early 40s, and none of them is moved by any tongue hall that comes up on none of them.
William, that's all the time we have. Remember, one day is a long time in politics. Thank you for.
Well, I mean, the fellas had 25 years.
Anyways, that's all the time we have. We will see you next week. Thanks for being with us. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.